Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And for this episode of Let's Talk Jinx, which the patch was delayed a day because in the United States, Monday was Memorial Day to honor fallen veterans in war and such like that. But that does mean now the patch is dropped, we can get this video out at that time, but also in memory of those people that served. Thank you. In patch 13.11, and every 2 weeks when a patch drops, we talk about Jinx, changes to Jinx and other AD carries, because that will affect the Jinx laning phase and her matchups. And then something of an AD carry tier list to round the video out. Felios, with a bonus passive ADs being decreased. And they say, since Felios typically likes to spec into AD early, he's able to leverage the extra damage to dominate early laning, which feels a little odd, considering he's more of a scaling silent type. This should help make laning against him a bit easier for opponents. Well, he's a Felios, so I mean, like, the way he works, you can go up in AD, you can go up in lethality, which will, you know, against low, well, I was gonna say low armor early, but like that's like the one thing AD carries like do naturally scale is like some armor for trades, I guess. So I guess I'm wrong there. I will see how this goes. There's a lot of nerfs and buffs and stuff that have come in lately that I want to call non-factors. Because there probably is some factor. If you're an Felios player and you're still watching right now, you're probably like, no, that's actually huge. Because it says the bonus attack damage going from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 to 4.5, 9, 3.5, 13.5, 18, 22.5, and 27. So you're going to lose like 3 whole AD late. Perhaps it is an issue. Perhaps it is a factor, right? Because I always talk about, like, you know, last hitting and stuff. Every bit of AD counts when you're trying to last hit minions, so. Jumping to Jinx, the attack speed growth is being decreased. They say Jinx has been getting away with a strong laning phase despite her identity as a scaling marksman. We're reverting her attack speed growth introduction in patch 13.5 to reduce her overall rocket DPS. In other words, people, skill diff. If you're having struggling problems against Jinx, one of the most immobile AD carries in the game, and I'm sorry, but like rockets and stuff, like that is her strength. Should her laning phase be good enough to get her to the late game by herself? Obviously no, but I swear all the complaints I've seen about Jinx weren't about the laning phase, it was about the late game where she's supposed to be strong. Y'all literally will play assassins late game that can two-shot people with enough lethality and be like, yeah, that's okay. But Jinx late game, you'll be like, ah, that's sus, even though she's always been late game for 10 years now that she's been in the game nearly. Obviously, we're biased, so you got to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. With attack speed growth, we've talked about this last week. It's going from 1.36 to 1. My math is a little off last week, but basically, it won't matter because we build attack speed items now. A lot of items have attack speed in them. We'll be able to cover that, and we're still going to DPS all over people's faces late game. Now, because we're talking about the Felios Jinx matchup and how that works is, even though Jinx's attack speed growth is going down, her damage is still there. While Felios, they actually are reducing like half the damage, or like a point, when I mean half, I mean 0.5 damage off of his scaling if he wants to opt into AD early. So technically you should win trades a little bit. You don't have as much attack speed to pump out, but the damage itself should still be there. And honestly, with the Felios, you should be poking him with the rockets anyways, which the growth isn't going to matter all that much regardless. Kalista's also getting some changes. The base health increased, health regeneration increased, attack damage decreased, passive vision interaction adjusted, on hit damage increased, Q damage increased, E cooldown decreased, damage adjusted. Kalista's auto attacks are feeling weak at the moment due to the 90% total AD ratio missing during vision loss. We know that Kalista has really hurt after 3.10, so we're targeting some pretty large buffs aimed at usability and durability for her. The changes to base AD, Q, and E help her damage output roughly equal to before. So basically, this is really, it looks like a lot of stat changes for buffs, but what they're basically saying is Kalista was hurt in the 13.10 changes a lot more than they wanted. So they're doing a couple of adjustments that should put her back to where she was before then. And there's a lot to talk about here, but if she's basically, the idea is to make her the same as she was, as they say, roughly equal to before, then in terms of the Kalista Jinx matchup, it's exactly the same as it was. Overall, the rest of it should still be exactly the same. If you're struggling against Kalista right now, you're going to still struggle, because these are all technically buffs after all. And if you're not struggling against Kalista, and you even dominate Kalista, you should still get away with being able to beat Kalista in the laning phase. Outer laning phase, we don't really talk about because who knows what the rest of the team comp is and what you know, madness could unfold. And while that covers AD changes, there are some item changes we'll real briefly touch on. Galeforce, despite popular opinion heading into the patch, it turns out Galeforce is indeed strong, even with the opportunity cost of Infinity Edge and Navari Quick Blades. We're walking back some of the preemptive buffs it got headed into 13.10, specifically targeted at its strongest synergies on Yasuo and Yone, which far exceeded the others and their options. Basically, they thought Galeforce was going to be weak by them allowing Infinity Edge to be a mythic, and they were wrong, so they buffed it preemptively, and now they're just reverting the buffs. So, Kraken Slayer, meanwhile, crit marksmen are dealing too much damage and long engagements, so we're switching Kraken Slayer to deal physical damage instead of magic. It dealt magic damage? I'm sorry. When I was using it, I mainly used it to knock down structures, so I guess I really wasn't paying attention this whole time, but I guess it did magic damage, and now it's doing physical damage, which makes a lot of sense, to be honest. Runon's Hurricane's on-hit damage is going down from 30 to 50. 15. I can't speak. Meanwhile, Static Shiv launched a bit underpowered. Yeah, it sure did. I tested it on Jinx, I tested it on Yasuo, I tested it because my old Yasuo build had Static Shiv. And it was still, you know, Static Shiv. It was fun, but it definitely needs some buffs, so there we go. And we got some upcoming skins, so you might see these champions in your games because people might be playing these champions, at least for the first couple days as usual. So we got the DRX skins have dropped, and there is one for Ashe and Caitlyn. So you might see Ashe and Caitlyn in your games down in the bottom lane. There aren't really, well, there is a support in there somewhere. Hold on, because there was a support level. Oh, Ashe, my bad. And there's a prestige version of Aatrox. You're not going to be seeing Aatrox in the bottom lane, though. I can safely kind of bet on that one. But here are the DRX skins, and here's Caitlyn and Ashe over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but on the right side, they're towards the middle right now that I zoomed in. There they are. You will be seeing them in your games, probably at least a little bit. They're pretty nice skins, to be honest. I'm not going to give Caitlyn any credit, of course, as a Jinx player, but it's a decent skin. So, what we usually round out this video with is an AD carry tier list of sorts. Jinx's attack speed growth going down is supposed to reduce her rocket spam, which is supposed to hit all parts of her game, but it's mainly supposed to hit her early game. Jinx was never really supposed to be like a lane phase bully. So even if it hurts her laning phase, I'm going to be honest, and this is obviously opinion, but it's not going to actually hurt that much, because it'll just go back to the times where we had to kind of fight our way out of laning phase and maybe lean on our supports. But late game, once we start building items and stuff, we're still going to be able to spam rockets because that's what Riot wants us to do. We're a late game hyperscaling monster. They just want to curve the laning phase so we don't snowball too early, which makes sense. That's all to say, I don't think Jinx moves at all. So in your own personal AD carry tier list, if you had her like at A tier, I think she stays A tier. She obviously doesn't move up with these changes. She doesn't go from A tier to S tier, but I don't think she falls from A tier to B tier either. I think she still stays S tier, or A tier, in my personal opinion. I don't think she's S tier, but I do think she's A tier, and I think she stays A tier. Felio, so also got some changes on this patch. The people might not spec into AD because of the changes, but the other stuffs were unchanged, and maybe those things are still strong, right? If Felios wants to spec into, I believe, like I said, lethality is one of the things he could go for. I wouldn't say these changes make him worse either, but I don't know if I would move him up from where he is. For me, Felios is kind of like a B tier. He's kind of working his way towards A tier. I wouldn't say he's like garbage, because I should also clarify, for me, B tier is not bad at all. You have to get to like C, D tier before I actually consider you bad. B tier just means there's probably other AD carries you want to ban and pick first, but Felios is a viable option. B tier for me is like viability. So I think he's viable. I don't think the changes actually hurt him all that much because he does have different build paths, but I don't think he moves up at all. This is all opinionated. Your opinion down in the comment section down below, of course, with, of course, Kalista being the final changes, where Kalista did get hurt quite a bit more than she was supposed to. 13.10 was supposed to actually be great for AD carries, and it wasn't for Kalista. That kind of moved her down quite a bit into a position where they need to buff her out of non-viability. But I do think she goes back into viability. If nothing else, having extra health, all your stats across the board going up feels like good. It's at least quality of life stuff. And I think quality of life always tends to help more than hurt. So I do think Kalista now is like viable. I think I would, if she's not in my B tier, she would move to B tier at this point. I guess honorable mention to Ashe and Caitlyn for, getting skins in this patch, but I don't really usually value that too much. It's just more like, if you main those champions, you probably want those skins and you're going to be playing those, champions. There's a chance maybe you don't, you just really like the skins because the Ashe one's based off of like Genshin Impact and you might like Genshin Impact. But most likely if you're seeing Caitlyn's and Ashe, you're also probably playing against mains that play those champions like religiously and they want to test out the new skin on their champions. So be careful, a bit of a asterisk or an alert. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button. But I don't know what video will be next because I can have a lot of kinks. So until this time, take care. GG get jinxed. Thank you for watching and enjoy pizza responsibly.